Telephoto lenses explained in plain English in less than 10 minutes. Hi and welcome to episode 64 of the Photography Explained podcast. I'm your host Rick, and in each episode I will explain one photographic thing to you in plain English in less than 10 minutes-ish without the irrelevant details. What I tell you is based on my lifetime of photographic experience and not Google. Here is the answery bit. This is take 2 by the way, because copy and paste errors bit me on take 1. Right then, let's try again. A telephoto lens offers a narrower field of view than a standard lens. The focal length of a telephoto lens is greater than a standard lens and more than 50mm on a full-frame camera. Telephoto lenses are used to photograph distant objects and to isolate features in a scene. Telephoto lenses are used for wildlife, sports, landscape photography, anything where you want to zoom in. I'll come on to pigeonholing in a bit. What is the focal length of a telephoto lens? I've got too many angles from my wide angle post that I've just tried to adapt to this. Hopefully I won't make any more mistakes. Well, anything more than 50mm on a full frame camera could theoretically be considered telephoto, but the general rule of thumb is anything longer than 60 to 70mm is telephoto. That's on a full frame camera. So what is that on a crop sensor camera? Well, let's remind ourselves. Easy for me to say. Crop sensor cameras have a crop factor of 1.5 to 1.6 depending on the lens manufacturer. So 60 to 70mm on a full frame camera equates to 60 times 1.5 or 1.6, which is 90 or 96mm. Telephoto lenses on crop sensor cameras have a focal length of more than 90mm using the 1.5 crop factor. What does that mean on a micro four thirds camera? Well, as I said in previous episodes, micro four thirds cameras have a crop factor of 2. Math's so easy even I can do it. 50mm on a full frame camera equates to 50 times 2, which is 100mm. Telephoto lenses on micro four thirds cameras have a focal length of more than 120mm. Right, that's a difficult bit out of the way. I noticed that I actually write the word so at the beginning of many sentences, and then I chastise myself for saying so at the beginning of many sentences, so maybe if I didn't write it in there in the first place, I wouldn't have this problem. What different telephoto lenses are there? Well, there are lots. If we stick with full-frame cameras and Canon lenses, there are many focal lengths. But what does focal length actually mean? Well, I'll tell you what the popular focal lengths are and what their horizontal field of view is. Now, I did this for the wide-angle lenses, which gives you a good idea of the difference. So this is the horizontal view, that's the wide bit in landscape mode, and not the diagonal. Starting with a 50mm lens, that gives you a 40-degree field of view. 70mm, 29 degrees. 100mm, 20 degrees. 200mm, 7.3 degrees. 300mm, 6.5 degrees. 400mm, 5 degrees. 600mm, 3 degrees. 800mm, 2.35 degrees. Yeah, 800mm. In very crude terms, the bigger the number, as in the focal length, the bigger the lens, the more expensive it is, but the closer you get to things. What does telephoto actually mean? It's not necessarily to do with a long focal length lens, because that's what all of these things are. These lenses, 100 to 800mm, are long focal length lenses, but strictly speaking, telephoto is to do with some specialist stuff within the lens that does something telephoto-ish. Now, I did look into this and I didn't understand it. It got too complicated, so I've done the decent thing and decided not to worry about it. It's not going to help us understanding the exact word telephoto. What is going to help us is understanding what telephoto lenses in their broadest term are and what the differences are from other lenses and why you might want one. That's the point of the podcast. Tell you things you need to know, tell you when you don't need to worry about something. Are telephoto lenses fixed or prime? It's the same as with wide-angle lenses. You can get both. What are telephoto lenses used for? Main uses: sport, obviously, getting in close to the action. Wildlife, you're not going to walk up to a lion with a standard lens, are you? And say cheese. I'm not sure what you'd say to a lion. Would you say raw meat, please don't kill me? Sport, wildlife, aviation. That's unless you can fly. Oh yeah, that's planes and birds. I was confusing myself there. So yeah, aviation, planes in the sky. You're not going to get close to them unless you're in a plane. They are also used for landscapes. No, we don't just use wide-angle lenses for landscapes. Same for architecture. You can use, and I do use, telephoto lenses in architecture. Same as cityscapes, just like with wide-angle lenses. You can use these things for a variety, well, for virtually anything. What do telephoto lenses actually do? They get you in closer, they bring things to you, and they compress the perspective. You know those photos where it looks like everything's, well, it's the opposite of not depth of field, but on a wide angle lens everything's wide open. On a telephoto, on a long focal length, it compresses things and brings them closer together and gives a different feel to an image. It's a brilliant effect. I love using them actually. A word on depth of field. Now mistakenly I thought that the depth of field changed with the focal length. It doesn't. The depth of field is no different on a telephoto lens as it is on a standard lens. It just looks like it because the lens has magnified what you're looking at. Now you can use that to get amazing photos with fantastic blurred out backgrounds which make the subject matter really pop. That's a great use of telephoto lenses. Very, very powerful. What do I use? Well, I use a Canon 70 to 200mm lens. It's the f4IS USML alphabet soup lens, as somebody once said. I'm a bit of a wide-angle junkie, so it's in there, but I don't use it often. But I use it for reasons which I will get onto. Back in the day, I had a 100 to 400mm monster Canon zoom lens, but I sold that a long time ago. But I did have a fantastic time photographing cricket with it. I might have mentioned this before. I was at a cricket match with my dad, and I'd had a few drinks, and I had my Canon 100 to 400mm lens with this massive lens hood, and I kept on knocking this lady in front in the face. Not one of my finest days. And nowadays, I use telephoto lenses in my work when I'm sober, which is all the time, when I want to capture a detail or get close into something. I also use them to get different effects on interiors. You can use them in all sorts of areas, and that leads me seamlessly onto the point I wanted to make about pigeonholing. Wide-angle lenses are not just for landscapes. Telephoto lenses are not just for sports. Each has its own uses in any field. You can use a wide-angle lens to photograph pretty much anything. You can use a telephoto lens in any genre of photography. So they're not pigeonholed like that. You need to think about them and use them creatively. I will say, if you use a wide-angle lens to photograph somebody, it won't be great. That's the one notable exception. Other than that, it's just being creative and thinking about what you're photographing. How much do telephoto lenses cost? Well, I've aimed high on this one. The Canon RF 600mm f4L IS USM lens is listed on the Canon website at, wait for it, £13,719.99p. £13,000 for a lens. It's not even a zoom lens. That's remarkable, isn't it? I've always wondered, well, I used to wonder back in the day, how can somebody possibly afford a lens costing £13,000? But the truth is, if you need one, you'll make money from it. And the other wonderful thing about lenses is that they hold the value so well. If you bought one of those lenses today for £13,719 and 99p, I reckon in 5 years' time, you'd get your money back, if not more. I've very rarely lost any significant money on a lens. I've normally got back at least what I paid for it some years later on. And as I've explained before, I have bought quite a lot of lenses that I didn't need. Right, my one-line summary. Telephoto lenses get you in close and compress the scene. This allows us to get a different perspective and get less in our photos. Wide-angle lenses, we're getting more in. Telephoto lenses, there's less in. We're isolating the picture, we're reducing the field of view, and we're changing the perspective of the bits in the frame, compressing the scene. Wonderful things, wonderful things. Next episode, well, my notes helpfully say episode 64. Change that to 65, bear with. After telephoto lenses, I was going wide again. I'm going to go really wide. I touched on these in the wide angle lens episode. What are fisheye lenses? And that's fisheye is one word, was my first bit of learning. It's not two words, fisheye is one. I'm working on the title for that one. Right, I'm done. Please leave a nice review and rating if you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you could tell one person about my podcast, I would be most grateful. To find out more about my podcast and to ask a question of your own, check out the Photography Explained podcast website. And to find out more about me, please go to rickmcavoyphotography.com. Thank you very much for listening to my small but perfectly formed podcast. It says here. Sorry, I wrote that. This episode was brought to you by Walker's Salt and Vinegar Crisps and an anticipated toasted bagel with bacon on it and brown sauce. Right, that's taken me just over my 12 3/4 minutes. Thank you again for listening. I've been Rick McAvoy. Thank you again for giving me 13 minutes and 30 seconds of your valuable time. And I will see you on the next episode. Fisheye lenses. Cheers from me, Rick. Bye.